Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour as we are going to get you set for a huge NFC East matchup between your Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders, the surprise Washington Commanders, who sit at 7-3, half game behind the Eagles for first in the NFC East. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donnell. Connor, we have a big one set for us this week.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a huge game. We've kind of been emphasizing it the last couple of weeks and last few episodes. But I mean, I've been saying it for the last few weeks. This 2-game stretch could be the deciding factor or something that the Commanders or Eagles look back on and say, more the Eagles, how we came out of that just dictated what happened to us in the NFC East. So I think that this game is huge. The win over Dallas was massive. If you can get the win over Washington, I would say you control your own destiny for the NFC East.
Yeah, probably. This is a huge game, and you want to win your division games at home, and the Eagles are going to have to go to D.C. In about a month or so. So being able to win this game just to kind of have that extra foot on them. The Eagles are 2-0 in the division right now. Washington is also 2-0. They have yet to play Dallas, and they have yet to play the Eagles. The Eagles have yet to play Washington, and they beat the Giants and the Cowboys in the division. So this is a huge game. But before we jump into that, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJ54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcast from, at Eagles Pinpool Network. And if you're tuning in live, let us know your thoughts on the game, your player to watch, your prediction, and we will do our best to get to them as we go throughout the show. So, Connor, this is probably the best team the Eagles have faced since Cincinnati. Not record-wise, that offense is good. The Eagles were able to hold them down, but since Green Bay, probably week 1 in Brazil. Neither the Eagles or Washington have really played a tough schedule yet to this point. So this is going to be a test for both teams, and we're going to be able to find out where each team sits and, who's going to have that leg up going into that, as we continue into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we keep looking at this season in chunks because the first chunk of the season started really poorly. The second chunk of the season was post-bye week, those 3 games where it was, okay, time to get right. And then the next 3 games were the Jaguars plus the 2 huge NFC East divisional matchups. So we've been kind of breaking it down by chunks. And there's another chunk coming up because the Commanders, Rams, and Ravens are arguably your toughest stretch of football that you're going to have to play this season. Mm-hmm. Because then you go off and you play the Panthers, Steelers, Commanders, Cowboys, and Giants. So then the next toughest matchup after that, you got the Steelers and Commanders back to back, but you got some softer games in between. So it'll be really interesting to see if the Eagles can continue to play to the level of dominance that they've been playing with against teams that they should have beat the way they've been beating them. So hopefully, the Jags game was closer than expected. The Browns game was closer than expected, but otherwise, the Jaguars game could have been more dominant. And the Browns game definitely could have been more dominant too and could have just been some bye-week rest. But now it's time to show that it wasn't just a weak stretch of games or a weak stretch of teams, that you can hang with the big boys. Because, whether we like it or not, the Commanders are a big boy in the NFC right now. They are one of the top teams. They were leading the NFC right up until last week when they lost that nail-biter to the Steelers. And then we controlled our fate and beat up on the Dallas Cowboys. So this is going to be a big game and a big couple of games coming up for the Eagles to really prove that they are everything that we have thought they were over this 5-game winning streak.
Yeah, definitely. And for the Eagles' sake, this is a test we can start on the defensive side of the football. Like, you have a quarterback who's playing, and even though he's a rookie, he's playing really well. Ron Jaworski the other day called him the best rookie quarterback he has ever seen in the NFL, which is saying a lot. When you think about Peyton Manning, you think about what C.J. Stroud did last year. That's some big words coming from Jaws. They got a running game. They're not going to shy away from running the football with Brian Robinson Jr., who's back, and Austin Eckler. They have Terry McLaurin, we know how good he is, so it's going to be a big test for Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay. They also have Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's younger brother. Zach Ertz is coming back to Philly for the first time. It would be interesting to see. He'll probably get cheered right like on the outset, but once the game starts and they kick off, he's an enemy. Who cares if he caught the game-winning touchdown for the Eagles' only Super Bowl? He's gonna hear it if he scores a touchdown. I'm very interested to see, and their offensive line really isn't that great if you think about it. They do have Tyler Biadasz from the Dallas Cowboys. They have Nick Allegretti from the Chiefs. The Commanders went out last offseason. I think they signed like 19 or 20 players. Like they really went out there and spent a lot of money. They had the most cap room, so they went and spent it. They have former Eagle Olamide Zaccheaus at receiver, but I think that the Eagles, like, even though they haven't been able to generate much pressure, the last couple of weeks, that this is an opportunity for them. I'm very intrigued by the matchup of Cliff Kingsbury versus Vic Fangio. Fangio is an old school defensive coordinator who's been around a long time. Jayden Daniels is a rookie. He hasn't seen everything. We'll see if Fangio is able to show something that Daniels hasn't seen, and if he'll be able to, force him to potentially, throw the ball up and let, Mitchell, Jayden, Slay, one of the linebackers, whoever it may be, see if they're able to, force a couple of turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, beyond like the offensive line has, from a purely like if we look at PFF and their pass blocking efficiency standpoint, has actually been very effective. They're one of a handful of teams that has yet to give up 10 sacks on the season. So they're giving up about a sack a game, just over a sack a game right now. It's actually, under a sack a game because they've only allowed 9 sacks this season and they played 10 games. So but I mean, I think that kind of speaks to Cliff Kingsbury and what he's been doing with Jayden Daniels, because I mean, when you look at this offensive line up and down, it's definitely not their strength. It's definitely not one you would think was a top 10 offensive line in the league, but from a purely pressure on Jayden Daniels sacks standpoint, they've been extremely efficient. And that's probably helped Jayden Daniels to get comfortable at the NFL level. Because I mean, when you look at a guy like Caleb Williams, I mean, the guy is lucky to still be staying. Drake May, those two guys are playing behind absolute atrocities of deep offensive lines, and it shows. And it's hard to get accustomed to the NFL when you're constantly under pressure. I mean, I guess it's like a big welcome to the NFL if you're getting constant pressure. But I mean, it helps a lot as a rookie quarterback to have the time in the pocket to make the decision and to figure out what you want to do with the ball. Terry McLaurin, obviously, everybody was sitting there saying, eventually get this man a quarterback and he's going to be a legitimate wide receiver. And here we go. He's finally a legitimate wide receiver. He had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons under his belt with subpar quarterback. And now he's having a really great season with Jayden Daniels throwing him the ball. He's up to 711 yards, 6 touchdowns, definitely a weapon. Their passing offense as a whole, I mean, they don't throw the ball a lot, but they get a fair amount of yards. They rank 11th in total passing yards. The strength of their game is in the rushing attack. They're a top 5 rushing attack across the board, and that could be Jayden Daniels with his legs. That can be Brian Robinson, who, like you said, is coming back. That can be Austin Eckler, who's taking like a backseat role, but Austin Eckler can be extremely efficient. We know Austin Eckler is coming off being one of the top running backs in the league over a couple of seasons prior to the Chargers offense melting down last season and him moving over to Washington. So this offense as a whole, like, it's nothing super, super sexy. Like, you don't look at Terry McLaurin and think of him in the same vein as AJ Brown or Jamar Chase or the legit wide receiver ones. You don't think of Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler in the same vein as, look at Jonathan Taylor, a Saquon Barkley, a Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry. The only one that you think of as one of those top elite talents right now is Jayden Daniels. Mm-hmm. Everything else is just kind of mediocre, but it just goes to show the type of skill that Jayden Daniels has, how good Jayden Daniels may very well be, and just how good maybe a Cliff Kingsbury offense really can be when he can just focus on being an offensive coordinator instead of a coach.
Yeah, and I think the Eagles interviewed Cliff Kingsbury to be their offensive coordinator before they're hiring Kellen Moore. And Kellen Moore, I mean, some coaches are probably meant to be offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators, and Cliff Kingsbury is probably one of them guys we saw. I mean, in Arizona, he was able to get a lot out of Kyler Murray, but it definitely fizzled down the end. That's why he got let go. But he's doing a great job with Jayden Daniels right now. And Jayden Daniels is running away with the offensive rookie of the year. Like, it's no contest. There's nobody else that's going to be competing for it. Unlike defensive player of the year, when there are 3 or 4 different guys, including Quinyon Mitchell and potentially Cooper DeJean, that are up for that. But, he does deserve a lot of credit. But, the one thing that the Eagles are going to have to do, hit him, because we know a couple weeks ago he had that rib injury, and Marcus Mariota, former Eagle, backup quarterback, came in and was able to beat who did they beat? I forget who they beat when he came in. But this is a really resilient team. Dan Quinn deserves a lot of credit that he's got this team fighting and this team battling. Brian Johnson, former Eagles offensive coordinator, is also over there. So there's a couple Eagles ties with this Washington team. But, it's just a big, this big divisional matchup, because first place is on the line. Like, that's the one thing that we can't forget. Like, whoever wins this game obviously has the upper hand in the division. So, and with it being a home game and a short week, like, it's a shame that this is a short week, because could you imagine if you had a full week to get ready for this game?
Should be a Sunday night game. If the NFL knew the Commanders were going to be this good and knew the importance of this game, it would never have been on Thursday night.
Well, probably not. Like,
unlikely. I mean, you guys sometimes give the Thursday night guys something to.
Well, they had they had the Baltimore Cincinnati game last week that was excellent. So
back-to-back weeks of absolutely amazing Thursday night football. You'll never see it again.
Potentially amazing. This could be a dud of a game.
Yes, I guess we should relax a bit. Sloth Broads _SP. Hey, how's it going? And Brett Eclipse says Ertz still helping out the Eagles to this day with not fighting for that extra yard last week.
So I thought he was short, but there are a lot of people that are saying that he got jobbed on that by the refs. I don't know. But he is one that, like, he even did it with the Eagles. There were times that he wouldn't get an extra yard or whatever it was. But I mean, it's going to definitely be seeing Zach Ertz in Washington Commanders uniform on Lincoln Financial Field is going to be different. It's going to be different. There's only one player in the history of the franchise that has caught a game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl for the Eagles, and it's him. So it's definitely going to be different. But again, we were sticking on the defensive side of the football. I want Jalen Carter's going to have to step up. Like, his numbers haven't been there. He doesn't have the sacks, but the way he has, haven't we?
Yes,
No,
we
have,
have, but he hasn't returned to the link. Haven't we played against Ertz every year since he left?
No.
We played against him last year, but it was in Arizona.
We didn't play Arizona last year. We did. We played Arizona here, but he was hurt. I think he was hurt.
Was it the week? Yeah, it might have been hurt. Yeah.
We did.
He hasn't actually physically stepped on the link as an opposing.
He wasn't uniform. He wasn't with Arizona last year. He was on. He got cut, and he was with, like, Detroit, because Sam Laporta got hurt, but he never played. He was, like, on their practice squad. So he was with Arizona 2 years ago, and we didn't play him. So this will be the first time the Eagles have played Zach Ertz. I'm almost positive.
So continue, Jalen Carter.
Yeah. But Jalen Carter, like, he hasn't had the numbers, like the sacks or whatever, but, like, he's dominating some of these double teams, and he's gonna have to do that again. You have a team that's not going to shy away from running the ball. The Eagles have one of the top running defenses in the NFL right now, but that's because not many teams try to run against them. They have one of the, I mean, what are they, second in the NFL in yard, if I'm not mistaken, in like yards or whatever. They're top 5 at least. So, and over the last 5 in their 5-game winning streak, they've only given up 13 points a game. So this defense is playing at a high level. And again, I said it on Monday, Vic Fangio deserves a lot of credit. I was crushing him earlier in the year because I thought he was kind of washed. I thought his old school tactics weren't working, but he's got this defense playing at a high level right now. Zach Bond won NFC Defensive Player of the Week. And I say this multiple times, he might be pricing himself out of being an Eagle. Unless Howie gets something done quick, if they wait till the end of the year, he might have priced himself. Somebody's going to give him money because he has been he's been a revelation for the Eagles at linebacker. You know, when the Eagles signed him, it was more of I personally thought it was like, okay, he'll be a rushing linebacker, special team guy. No, he's one of the top linebackers in the league. So again, it's going to come down to tackling. Brian Robinson's good. Austin Eckler's good. Terry McLaurin, Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Brown, they're all, good in space. So Cooper DeJean is going to be key in the slot. Whether it's Mitchell or Slay against Terry McLaurin, I would love to see Mitchell just follow him around the field, but Slay's probably not going to allow that to happen. He doesn't want his ego to get hurt. But it should be a very interesting matchup for this Eagles defense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jalen Carter, like you said, last week he had another really great game. No, did he show up on the stat sheet? No. But I mean, if you look at the amount of pressures that were counted towards him, if you watch the tape on the game, I mean, he had an incredible game last week. Like you said, he eats double teams, he eats bodies, and he makes it hard for an offensive line not to allow pressure because they have to focus so much of their attention on Jalen Carter. Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean have been amazing. There was talk, we talked about it too. Like there's a lot of respected people who said, Zach Bond could be the Andrew Van Ginkel. And we were like, okay, we'll believe it when we see it type of thing, but it's possible. But I bet nobody who said he'd be Andrew Van Ginkel for the Eagles that was to Miami last year, that it was going to be anything like this. Like he is arguably the best linebacker in football this year in general. I mean, there's some others, like if you look at it statistically, I mean, if you just want to look at tackles, obviously good. You can argue that there's better linebackers purely from a statistical standpoint. But I mean, the impact on his team, on his defense, and on the game cannot be understated for Zach Bond and what he's been doing in Philadelphia since week 1. Even when the defense wasn't at the top of their game, who were we talking about on a weekly basis? Zach Bond, because he was still the best player on this defense from week 1 all the way through to now week 10. He's been the best, without a doubt.
Yeah, Brett Clip says, you think Fangio will use either Bond or Dean as a spy? I've heard rumblings as maybe even Cooper in that role. I wouldn't take Cooper DeJean out of his slot role. I want him covering a receiver. But I think Nakobe Dean would be perfect for that. Or even potentially like a Nolan Smith. He's got the speed. He got the physicality to potentially do it. But I would probably use Dean. But it wouldn't be like that's all he does type of deal, because you obviously want to mix the defenses up. But yeah, they do have to be careful. I think like the first 5 games of the year, Jayden Daniels was running like 10 to 15 times a game. Now he's down to about 5 in the last 5 games. So I wonder if like they're definitely probably trying to keep him aware of not taking on hits, because you don't want to. He's their franchise. Like you lose him, you're not in the playoffs. Marcus Mariota is not leading you to the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if they run a lot of zone read or if they allow him to run. But like this is a huge game, obviously. You want to have that upper hand. So anything, I mean, it could be all hands on deck type of deal. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Fangio decides to use a Dean or a Smith or somebody like that to spy him, especially when like on crucial third downs, when he may want to use his legs to get the first down.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, especially it's definitely going to be situational. I mean, to think about, will they have a spy on first down? Probably not. But in those crucial points, on third down, where sometimes we're not the most effective. And usually when we aren't most effective on those, it's because we're giving up a big play passing or the quarterback running the football. Maybe you'll want to spy. But we know Fangio is not a guy that falls into doing the same thing over and over again. He's a guy who likes to mix up his looks. But I mean, it's always going to be, make sure you know where the ball is, keep your attention on Jayden Daniels, remember who we're up against, and not just fixating on, the guy you might be on or whatever. There's going to be a lot of attention from the defense directed towards Jayden Daniels and his ability with his legs and stuff. So otherwise, like from a defensive standpoint, I mean, it is going to be a big week for Darius Slay and Kenyon Mitchell. I mean, Luke McCaffrey is good when called upon, but really it's been Zach Ertz and it's been Terry McLaurin who are really leading this passing attack for most of this season. 711 receiving yards for Terry McLaurin, and then Zach Ertz and Noah Brown are 381 and 351. So they have they have some ancillary pieces like Olamide Zaccheaus, who used to be an Eagle, Noah Brown, and Luke McCaffrey, when called upon, are able to make plays and be effective, but should be guys that you can handle based on what we've seen from Kenyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, whoever's on those guys should be able to handle their business. It's going to be watching Terry McLaurin and keeping an eye on Zach Ertz in the slot. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, overall, you wouldn't think that this offense would be as great as they are, but they're scoring the number one at points per drive, number one in average yards per drive, number two in plays per drive. Like they have they've sustained drives. They get a lot of yards on their drives and they get points on their drives. So they're a highly effective offense, and this defense is truly going to have to be up to the test. And I mean, based on what we've seen so far, I mean, we're pretty much top 15 across the board defensively. So obviously we're going to have to really step up and show that, this isn't a mirage, that this defense is this good and that we can shut down a legit offense like the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to show up. Obviously, the fundamentals, and it's tough when you're trying to condense an entire week of preparation into 3 days. They didn't get back to Philly from Dallas until the wee hours of the morning. So all they did was walk through yesterday, walk through today, and then showing up to the stadium tomorrow. So that'll be interesting. Brett Eclipse,
but they're on the bright side. They're fully healthy. 53 men, nobody with an injury designation. There's guys banged up, but I think they know how important this game is, and they're like, I know I'm getting my rest after this game. I'm going to go out there and I'm putting it on the line for this game because they know the importance of this game as well.
Excuse me. Yeah. And Brett Eclipse says, historically, I feel the Birds have constantly gotten gashed by true rushing quarterbacks in year past. I get that Daniels is running less, but I still feel worried. And whenever we face Washington, I mean, Sam Howell destroyed us last year, and it was Sam freaking Howell. So Washington always plays the Eagles tough. It doesn't matter how bad they are. They're feeling, as a franchise, as a fan base, they're feeling reinvigorated because, Daniel Snyder is no longer the owner. So they went out and spent a lot of money this offseason, and that's why they're where they're at. And they're bringing in the right guys, trying to change the culture there. Again, I don't know if Dan Quinn is that great of a head coach. I know, like, he took Atlanta to the Super Bowl, but that could have been more on, having MVP Matt Ryan and Kyle Shanahan may have had a lot to say there. But we see how Dallas's defense isn't good, and they were pretty good when he was there. So it's a little give and take there.
Dan Quinn's respected at least throughout the league. Same as like a guy like Vic Fangio. You're gonna play for the guy, or else because he's gonna get the best or tries to get the best out of his players. So I mean, beyond that, I know we're gonna flip to talking about their defense. Their defense isn't actually all that great. I think it's more masked behind their offense is capable of putting up. Their offense is putting up the number 3 points for. They've scored 290 points 4, like it's astronomical. They're averaging like 29 points per game. It's huge. You can definitely mask some deficiencies in a defense when you're putting up 29 points per game, because their defense is they're giving up the 12th most or 12th rank in points against, which 217. So when you look at 290 to 217, it's a pretty significant differential, but 217 points against is a significant point differential or points allowed by a defense. So as we flip over to that, it'll be interesting to talk about that. Brett Eclipse, I agree with you. We're wearing midnight green tomorrow. I was hoping they'd whip out the all black. It would be nice because it feels like it should be somebody's funeral, and it's the funeral of the rest of the NFC East for taking this division.
Yeah, I mean, both these teams should make the playoffs.
Definitely, like there's
the winner will the winner's like definitely in, but like you'd think 10 wins makes the playoffs, 11 wins, and the Eagles are 7-2. They have 8 games left. The Washington 7-3. They have 7 games left. You think they can at least win 3 games the rest of the year? So
definitely,
yeah. So I think both of these teams are bound for the playoffs. You know, this could be the first of 3 matchups, obviously, because but you never know the potential of them facing in come wild card weekend or something if one doesn't get the number 1 seed. But yeah, switching over to the Eagles offense, you know, you mentioned how the Washington defense isn't that good. Just looking at some of the guys, they're missing their best player their best defensive player in Jonathan Allen, but they still have Deron Payne. They got Dorrance Armstrong from Dallas. Zeron Newton is a rookie, I think, from Illinois, who they drafted this year. Their linebackers, Bobby Wagner. I mean, he's still performing at a pretty high level, even in this year 15, I think, or something like that, year 13, 14. Frankie Louvu, who they got from the Carolina Panthers, he's doing well for them. Dante Fowler is, I think, what is he, 3rd or 4th in the league in sacks. So he's still being very productive coming off the edge. And, you know, Marshawn Lattimore, who they traded for, he's going to be out. So it's going to be Benjamin Shea-Juice. And my guess would be Emmanuel Forbes. And we saw what AJ Brown did to Emmanuel Forbes last year. Like he owned him last year. We'll see what Forbes has been able to learn this year. I think the Eagles have the favorable matchup when it comes to their receivers against the secondary of Washington. We always talk about how like the Eagles are a run first team, and I still think they are a run first team. And Washington's run defense is, if I'm not mistaken by the numbers, they're not that great either. So it can be an early dose of Saquon, and then let's get the ball down the field to these receivers. So, you know, it could be another big day. You know, AJ Brown had a quiet 109 yards last week. Wouldn't shock me if he went over 100 again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hit it. They ranked the Russian defense 24th in attempts, so teams are frequently running on them, and 28th in yards allowed. So they're giving up a lot of yards per attempt. So we know that, as almost every week has been, it's a Saquon Barkley week. Mm-hmm. We know that you got to take advantage of Saquon Barkley.
9 yards from 1,000 rushing.
Exactly. Like set the put the defense on their heels by sending Saquon Barkley after them and then hitting them with some of the throws when they least expect it. One thing that you can't change about Emmanuel Forbes is he didn't get bigger. He couldn't get taller. So if it's Emmanuel Forbes against A.J. Brown, you know A.J. Brown has the opportunity to bully him. Benjamin St-Juste, he's got some long arms. He's a big dude, but he's not the best when it comes to coverage. So you know that, you can probably take advantage of this situation. Whether you're Devontae Smith or whether you're A.J. Brown, you should be able to take advantage of some of this secondary. Even against Marshawn Lattimore, I think we've seen A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have some days against Lattimore. He hasn't been, maybe Lattimore's better days are behind him, but they knew they needed a semi-effective cornerback to help them. So I'm sure as he gets healthy, he's going to be an important part of this defense as well. Dante Fowler having like a while as more of like a secondary piece in that defense, 8.5 sacks. It's huge. Like he's having a great year. They did a good job of building this defense, and there's reason to respect it. but at the same time, it has its glaring weaknesses that teams have been able to take advantage of and show that you can take advantage of them. From a passing defense standpoint, they're definitely better. They have the least amount of passing attempts against them, but that's because they have one of the most rushing attempts against them. So teams don't need to throw the ball that much because they're being effective enough on the ground. So I think, this could be one of those games where Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts on the ground can have big days, and periodically he's going to have to throw. But it could be like a prior game where he only had to throw the ball 14 to 18 times. He may not have to throw the football a whole lot, but just try and be efficient with the amount of times he has to throw it. However, in a divisional game like this, I do have my concerns that, the score could be run up a bit because the two offenses could start to go shot for shot, and we could end up seeing both teams pump out, 25 plus points on each other. But that may not necessarily be anything against the defenses. More the offenses just start clicking and are forced to have to put the points up on the board. And these are two offenses that when their back's against the wall, we know the Eagles in the second half can put up points. We know the Commanders overall can put up points when they have to. So that could be something that we need to look out for on Thursday night as well.
Yep, a big fast start is going to be key for the Eagles. Brett Eclipse says, by all means, our offense matches up very favorably against their defense. They're a bit below average in rushing D, and we know what A.J. Brown and Smitty do to their corners, plus Lattimore is playing. Yep. So that's going to be definitely key for the Eagles. You talked about how many points can be put up. I mean, the over-under right now is 48.5 on FanDuel. So, it could be a high-scoring game. 48.5 is not something to laugh at. Brett Eclipse also says an underrated matchup to watch is Kellen versus Quinn. They overlapped in Dallas for 2 years, and Quinn got the better of him last year with the Chargers. Interested to see how Kellen does with superior personnel. I think the Chargers thing was that before or after all the injuries to their receivers and they had a lot of injuries with the Chargers when it came to their offensive skill positions. I can't remember, to be honest, but yeah, I mean, that is going to be a big matchup. We also thought that McCarthy would know what Kellen Moore would decide to call last week, and the Eagles put up 34 points. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be an excellent matchup. It should be a great matchup with the Eagles' offensive skill positions. We know that the Commanders are going to want to come and bring pressure on Jalen and try to force turnovers. He had 2 turnovers last week, and before that had no turnovers in 4 weeks or something like that since the bye. So it's going to be key again. One of the big keys, which one of us will say later when we do our keys to the game. Jalen has to protect the football, and the offensive line, they get Jordan Mailata back. So hopefully they're not giving up 5 sacks in the first half again. So run behind Mailata, let Mailata, whoever he's going up against, whether, that is, Dante Fowler or Cleveland Farrell, Dorrance Armstrong, whoever may be lining up against them. They won't get an easy pass rush, to them. Again, it is Parsons or Brian Burns, but they were able to get through, Fred Johnson. But I will give Fred Johnson credit. He did really well in the absence of Mailata. So while we missed Mailata, Fred Johnson, again, he's a backup for a reason. He didn't, he made the play. Again, Trey Hendrickson, he shut him down. So at least we know that he's going to be ready at a moment's notice if needed.
Yeah, he stepped in admirably, and he is a lot better backup left tackle than some starting left tackles in the NFL. There's a lot of teams that wish they had a Fred Johnson as their backup. Mm-hmm. Would he be as effective without Jeff Stetland? Well, that's another story for another day and another argument for another day. But I agree, Jordan Mailata being back is huge. I kind of thought the full practice was just, them ramping him up, and they were going to bring him back for the next week and give him time to ramp up to football activity. They're ready to throw him right into the Wolves and help out. I mean, I think, like I said, everybody knows how important this game is, and they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the Washington Commanders this week with a fully healthy roster. Jordan Mailata back. So it's going to be really interesting. You know the Birds are going to come out focused and ready to win because they've been red hot. And it's really going to be a tale of two really unique teams and unique situations. On the one hand, you got the Jayden Daniels story, the Washington Commanders offense went humming away, one of the best in the NFL. And then the Eagles, like when I was talking about earlier, I was saying, the Washington Commanders offense is scoring at the highest average drive rate, most yards per average drive, most time per average drive. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They rank 4th in points allowed per drive, 3rd in yards allowed per drive, 10th and 8th in time per drive. It's a tale of two teams that are working in complete. They're going to be perfect matchups against each other. At least, when you look at the Commanders offense versus the Eagles defense, I think if there's one matchup that can be taken advantage of and exploited the most, it's going to be the Eagles offense versus the Commanders, middle of the pack defense. This is an opportunity to take advantage. If your defense can continue to stand firm, Jalen Hurts has to protect the ball. We did see in the early going last week, and Tony Romo made the comment, I think during the broadcast, the Cowboys, of course, are going to give the Eagles the best defensive performance they've seen all year out of the Cowboys. And for the first half, he was 100% accurate with that. Mm-hmm. It looked like the Dallas Cowboys, it was like their best performance on defense in weeks, maybe even since well into last year. And then it all fell apart because obviously, like you said, once you start getting ahead, the Cowboys kind of knocked themselves out and quit. And that's essentially what they did as soon as the Eagles came out flying early in the second half. So, but we saw at the beginning, Jalen Hurts under pressure. We started to see what happens when Jalen Hurts gets under pressure. That's where he makes mistakes. And he hasn't been under a lot of pressure over the prior weeks before those first 2 quarters last week. Outside of that, Trey Hendrickson, like you said, non-existent. New York Giants were really able to get after him. There wasn't a team that was able to get after him and put him under a lot of pressure. And then we saw that last week. So hopefully this offensive line with Jordan Mailata fully healthy and ready to go are going to be able to stand up against this defensive line, because I think their strength comes for this defense comes on that defensive line, comes their defensive line, and it comes from their linebackers and the capabilities that Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner still have. But their secondary without Marshawn Lattimore, they went out and got Lattimore for a reason. They did not trust these guys to stand up against the big teams when it mattered come playoff time. And now they're without Lattimore, and they're in the same situation they've been, where this passing off defense hasn't really looked that good as the passing defense they are right now. So it'll be interesting to see, but I feel like that's the biggest advantage. If this Eagles offense can continue to hum like they've been humming and the ball can be protected, I think this really is their game to lose. Like, it's one of the games I felt more confident in, and I don't know why, because it's against the Commanders. It's a divisional game. It's going to be a really tough matchup, but I feel so confident based on how the matchups line up on paper.
Bretta Clip says, we talked about the Eagles gauntlet last year. Fred Johnson went up against the gauntlet of pass rushers. Garrett, Brian Burns, Hendrickson, Hines, Allen, and Parsons. You're not wrong about that. And hilarious that as soon as it gets easier, Mailata comes back. Well, he was put on IR. He has to take 4 games off.
Well, and they did say it was the minimum. So, like, it was 4 to 6 weeks. And, of course, Mailata, like, he's a freak. We know he's a freak. So, obviously, his health is he was going to be able to get better really quickly, and he did.
So, do you think that this could be the Jahan Dotson revenge game?
I would love to see it be the Jahan Dotson. There is nothing that I don't love to see more than a player against their old team and just blow up. We've seen Dotson become more reliable. Like, Hurts will look his way. He'll make his 1 or 2 plays a game, and Hurts will be like, thank you very much. Where previously in the season, he couldn't trust Dotson at all. But would I be surprised to see that Dotson get, instead 2 targets, maybe 4 or 5, and try and see, do you want to show your old team what you got? I wouldn't be surprised. I hope they do. There's nothing more that I love seeing than
I want it to be
that.
And I want it to be downfield. I don't want it to be like screens. Like let him get the ball down the field, let him get the ball in the open space down the field, and see if he can score a touchdown.
A
That would be
couple of
pretty cool.
recent big plays he's made has been downfield, and they've been
Exactly.
fairly impressive catches. So, like, he's got really good hands. That was one thing I said coming out of college. One of the things I loved about him that I thought he could overcome, the size disadvantage that he had at the NFL level. I thought he could overcome it with his hands like glue, and it shows up periodically, but not consistently. But I mean, if you can put enough faith in him, find him in an open position, I mean, he could have a nice day. I don't know if he finds the end zone, but I mean, if the guy can go for 60, 75 yards against his old team, I think that's more than we should be asking of him. So
I wonder what the odds are on a Jahan Dotson anytime touchdown. I'm about to look that up because that I wonder if that would be worth putting some. Let's see. Sorry, I'm getting there.
Now you got to do it. Now you're
I do have to check now. Thursday Night Football. Here we go. Anytime touchdown scores. Show them all. Wow, they don't even. Jahan Dotson is plus 900. Johnny Wilson's plus 1,200.
That would be nice.
Anais Smith is plus 2,400. Ben Van Sumeren is plus 3,000.
Imagine putting him on there. Boy, that would be funny. At some point this season when it might not even matter in a game, Ben Van Sumeren's going to be out there and they're going to give him a full back dive into that end zone. You just know it's going to happen.
No, because they're going to do a tush push. Let's be real.
I mean, if you have Kenny Pickett out, are you going to do the tush push, or are you going to try to give Ben Van Sumeren his first and probably only touchdown he'll ever get?
I mean, they did it last week. They did the tush push, and they got the first down. But that's what they're going to do. I do think that the Eagles being able to take the fourth quarter off could help them this game. And while Washington was playing and fighting and scrapping with the Steelers all four quarters, I think that can definitely be a big plus for the Eagles on Thursday night.
I agree. I mean, I think was it Nick Sirianni that said he felt it was really important to get the guys out when he could get them out in the fourth quarter on a short week. And we just, like, some people just sit there and say, it was only, it's only 15 minutes or whatever. I mean, you saw how grueling that Steelers and Commanders game is.
Mm-hmm.
That can be the difference between players being injured or players going in healthy into games by getting them off and not having to play a couple drives in a quarter. So I agree. I think that's huge. And then after this game, like, there's a lot of guys banged up. That guys like Smitty are not 100%. Goddard's not 100%. There's guys who've been showing up on the injury reports week in and week out who are not 100% and can use these next 10 days off big time. So I think that, having that extra quarter off plus this mini bye is big, because we entered the bye banged up and we came out of that bye with getting a bit banged up. Just like Dean, Goddard, Huff, Sy, Smith, just to name a few that were on the report this week alone.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens, and hopefully they're not looking. I don't think they're going to look past Washington, but looking forward to this 10-day break. Obviously, like, it'd be nice. They had their early bye week, but now they get to have a kind of a little mental reset after Thursday night, take the weekend off, and then come back to get ready for the Rams. But we'll see. All right, so before we get to our players of the game, our keys to the game, and our prediction, let's do our unheralded player of the week for week 10. Last week was week 10. Week 10 in the National Football League. Connor, you can do the honors and go first.
I didn't even come prepared with one.
I have one.
If you have one, you go. I'll try and find one quick based on the games.
Oh man, come on! You should know that this is our.
I knew it too. I knew it's because it's a Wednesday. It's weird. Yeah, I know. This is weird.
I'm going to go with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He had 3 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the Saints' 20-17 upset victory over the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, or the Saints, coming out on a 7-game losing streak, just fired their coach, Dennis Allen, and they were able to come away with this shocking victory in their interim coach Rizzi's first game as a head coach in the National Football League. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling averaging over 36 yards a catch, having the 2 touchdowns, and able to help the Saints come away with the victory.
I hate to do this, but the story is just too good. Because I know how much you hate when I pick someone on a losing team who didn't help their team win. And but John Mechie III led the Houston Texans in receiving with 5 receptions for 74 yards, plus got his first career NFL touchdown. If you don't know the story, the guy didn't get his career off the way he wanted. He was drafted, expected to, play a decent role for the Texans prior to them, piling up Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, among other names. And then he ended up having cancer. And that sidelined him for an entire season. And obviously, imagine the strength it takes even to come back that second season. And now I think he's 2 years removed. This is his third season in the NFL officially from his draft season. The story is just too good to have that. And I mean, who would have thought that they would lose based on a game where Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions? Like, how the Texans managed to lose that is just a whole nother story for another day. But yeah. I mean, the story for me on John Mechie was too good, based on, what he's gone through to get to this point and to get that first touchdown to lead this team in receiving. Obviously, from a receiving standpoint, the Texans have really banged up. Nico Collins' game time decision is out, ended up being out, and then Stephon Diggs out for this season. Great opportunity to step up, and he stepped up huge. And the Texans honestly should have won. So,
yeah, they should have. And I remember, preseason, offseason, I talk of potentially the Eagles trading for John Mechie to be their third receiver. I would have probably preferred Mechie over Dotson.
Alabama, it would have been cheaper, probably.
Alabama over Penn State, just saying. And when you have the Alabama ties with Hurts and Devontae, he would have fit in well. All right, so let's jump into our players of the game and our keys to the game for the Eagles and Commanders Thursday night football matchup. You can go first, Connor.
Oh boy, offensively, my eyes are going to be on. Man, I love the way that you said Jahan Dotson. It almost makes me want to pick him just for that touchdown, that revenge game touchdown. But I am going to put it on AJ Brown. Like you said, he went off for a silent 100 yards. But he didn't find the end zone. Just a typical walk in the park. 6 receptions for 109 yards, and he's an afterthought to last week. This week, I think he's got a real opportunity. The volume probably is going to be low again because I think the Eagles are going to take advantage of a much weaker Russian defense and pile on some Russian yards and Russian attempts. But when they need to look for somebody, I think they're going to look for AJ Brown. AJ Brown's been the guy. I mean, he's got almost 100 yards in every single game this season. There might be one game he missed it. So he's been huge. I think he's going to end up finding the end zone at least one time. He's going to go for 100 yards. And I mean, we could maybe only have 250 passing yards. So he could end up being over half the passing offense by the end of the game. But this matchup is just too juicy without Marshawn Lattimore there. And like you said, we saw what AJ Brown was able to do to these same cornerbacks last season. And offensively, key to the game, fast start. Mm-hmm. If you can control this game, you can win this game, because the biggest advantage we have is our offense versus their defense. Their offense versus our defense is like, David versus David. Like, it is going to be a war because you got 2 of the best at their crafts this season going mano a mano. So the offense has to take advantage of the fact that they have the better matchup, and any stop the defense gets could be an all-important stop, could be an only stop that they make before giving up points. So the Eagles offense needs to come out early, often protect that ball, and put some points on early. Put the pressure on Jayden Daniels. Make him have to work for this win and maybe make some bad decisions that lead to turnovers. Defensively, I'm going Milton Williams. Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, I mean, he had the fumble recovery. He's had a fairly quiet season. There was some fairly high expectations. This is a contract year. Is he going to be that guy that gets the midseason Howie contract extension? I don't think Howie's seen enough to give it. And he knows that, Milton Williams might know that he could get something more on the open market if he tests it. But I mean, you got Jalen Carter commanding a lot of attention. This can be that game where Milton Williams kind of comes out, gets a sack or two, some all-important plays. But as I said, this defense versus this offense, it's really going to be about getting pressure on Jayden Daniels, keeping him in the pocket, making him make throws from that pocket and make some decisions that might be fatal errors that this defense can take advantage of, because this defense was at one point one that we were so frustrated in because they could not get after the quarterback and they could not force turnovers. They are doing both at very, very impressive clips right now. And they're up against, on paper, a top 10 offensive line, but an offensive line with holes that they can absolutely take advantage of. So I think that I'm watching Milton Williams and I'm watching this defense closely, but I'm watching the offense a bit closer because Jalen Hurts and that offense being able to put that extra score or two up is going to make all the difference in taking some pressure off of this defense versus this Washington offense.
Yeah, and I I remember that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that sacks and turnovers come in bunches, and that's what's happening right now for the Eagles on the turnover side. And after the bye, it was sacks. So if they can continue that, it'd be good. Brett Eclipse says Quinion for me might be his most important matchup this year, given Terry McLaurin's tendency to line up on Q's side. You stop him, you stop their offense. So since you want to say that, I was going to say the rookie corners. One of them is going to get a pick. One of them is going to force a turnover, either Cooper DeJean or Quinion Mitchell.
I just don't want to get my hopes up anymore. I'm like, if I don't say it, maybe it'll come into existence.
I think one of us has said Quinion Mitchell for the last month or two. So hopefully he does get one soon because he's gotten his hands on a lot of football. It's just not able to bring it in. It's crazy. Quinion is so good. Like last week, he gave up 2 catches for like 14 yards or whatever it was. Like for a rookie, and like just the way he's able to stick with receivers. And then when it comes to Cooper DeJean, like fundamentally, he is so good when it comes to like he knows how to tackle. He had a play last week against CeeDee Lamb where like CeeDee Lamb caught it, and usually he makes a man miss and gets a first down or gets 10, 15 yards. Held him to a 2-yard gain. Like Cooper DeJean is really, really good. Like I'm at the point now where I'm almost with Vic Fangio's. I don't know if I want him returning punts because if he gets hurt, then we have to put Maddox out there, and I don't want Maddox out there. But
I can't believe I'm saying this, but Britton Covey's got to hurry up and get back.
Or
because we know you shove him
back.
Or put Anai Smith has issues, maybe not Anai
Isaiah
Smith,
Rodgers?
but like Isaiah Rodgers, Anai Smith, put someone else in the firing squad.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't make a mistake. But I mean, Britton Covey was 6 to 8 weeks, and we're closing in on that 6-week mark. So hopefully we'll see. But
Brett Eclipse says Cooper DeJean is so good at tackling, it almost makes you forget the nightmares of Bradbury's tackling last year. Speaking of, Bradbury could be coming back soon.
But where do you put him? I mean, you released Jack Stoll. Is that might be the last dead weight to release? Like, I don't even know.
He got claimed by Miami.
I don't even know. When Britton Covey comes back, who do you release from this roster? Like,
I have no idea.
I think you have to give a shot to Johnny Wilson and an Eisman. Like, do you really risk? I mean, Nick Gates. I think you could probably move Nick Gates off. Like, if that might be the one. But then you don't have your 10 offensive linemen, and I know how much you like to have.
Driscoll, you would probably get rid of.
There's Keegan, Gates, and Kennard and Driscoll. I mean, you could probably make a decision with one of them.
Driscoll.
Defensively, I don't think you can really move off of any of them.
No.
Oren Burks and Tristan McCollum.
Eli Ricks would probably be the guy, but I like Eli Ricks. Like, I know he's not playing, but
I think the Eagles like Eli Ricks too. Like, it's a tough decision. I'm glad it's only 2 more to come back, because I think if you had to make a decision on a 3rd or 4th player coming back, you'd have a hell of a time. You'd probably just keep them on the IR for the season.
Unless they fake IR somebody, which who knows. On the offensive side of the football, I'm gonna go Saquon. Like, I never pick Saquon. At least I don't think I ever pick Saquon. But 9 yards from 1,000. He got his first win against Dallas last week. He's going to want to come out and, prove like he's just going to want to come out and battle. And what the moves he's been able to do the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, the backward jump last week, that making Overshawn tackle Kendricks. Down, he caught the ball at the 20 and was able to get down to the 1 yard line somehow. He's incredible. He is really, really incredible. And again, he's somebody that I'm glad wasn't on the field in the fourth quarter on Sunday, because he's been touching the ball a lot, and they might want to give him the ball a lot again. So I want to see him go out there and get behind this powerful offensive line and go down the field. I think the Eagles are going to want to try to keep the ball out of Jayden Daniels' hands. And how do you do that? You run the football, take time off the clock. So I think that's what the Eagles are going to do. My big key on offense is you said it, start fast, keep the crowd in it. Because that Washington's going to want to come out, and if they win the toss, it wouldn't shock me if they took the ball first to try to score first to get the crowd out of it. Because we know how a Thursday night, all day, getting liquid courage, it's going to be loud at the Link. Fans are going to go absolutely berserk. So hopefully the Eagles are able to, if Washington gets the ball first, get a 3-and-out, get good field position to Jaylen and the offense, and if you score, you might be able to punch Washington early, and because it's a short week, they might just be like, all right, let's just get out of here. Hopefully, we'll see. The Eagles have scored in the first quarter the last couple of weeks. See if they can continue that. But start fast, and on the offensive side of the football, keep the crowd in it. And on the defensive side of the football, get a quick 3-and-out. Don't let Washington take the crowd out of the game. I know they're kind of the same, but they're my keys to the game.
You already know that Friday in Philadelphia, when there's a whole bunch of establishment short-staffed, you know exactly why. Because this game is important. The Eagles fans know it. The Eagles fans feel it. And I agree with you. I think they're going to be in it all night, and they're going to be really trying to make it a tough night for the Commanders.
I'm debating on taking off Friday. It's going to be a long night tomorrow night. Before we get to our prediction, Bretta Clip says crowd might hit a championship Robinson pick 6 level noise if Quinyon gets a pick, especially if we were searching for a touchdown. Quinyon needs to get one, man.
If he gets that pick, him or DeJean, the crowd will go wild for absolutely everything they do. Little G Griffith said, obviously, big fan of the Eagles 2024 season. It always is. Eagles beat the Commanders 31-14. Nice. With that, prediction time.
Go ahead. You can go first.
My prediction, I think it's going to be close. I disagree with Little G Griffith. I stand by. I think these two offenses are going to go pound for pound. And this is not a knock at the Eagles defense. I just think when points need to be put up, I think that Jayden Daniels is proven. And with this offense, he's proven they're capable of doing it. 31-28 for the Eagles. I do give us a W still. So
that's true. I should have mentioned I'm 6-3 on Eagles games. You're 4-5 on Eagles games.
Coming back. I think I was like 1-5.
You were 0-4 at one point. I have it 31-24 Eagles. It will be a close game. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter. I think the Eagles defense is going to be able to make a stop like they did 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville when Dean came away with the interception. But it should be a great matchup. You got these two young quarterbacks that could be battling. We always talk about how it's a 2-team race in the NFC East, the Eagles and the Cowboys. Well, it could be a 2-team race, the Eagles and Washington, over the next handful of years. With the way the Eagles are always built with this young quarterback, if he can stay healthy, because we saw what happened when they had RG3. They won the NFC East, and then he tore his ACL, and it went downhill. Washington was never able to stay the same. Bretta Cliff says 38-31 Commanders. We lose on a Goddard fumble with an obvious missed face back, just like 2022. I still remember when Goddard dropped the pass and it hit off his heel and was picked off by a Washington player. Still remember that.
Yeah, that doesn't feel good. That makes you feel like something's going to go wrong with Goddard. There's a jinx.
I almost picked Goddard as my offensive player of the game. I wanted to. He caught a touchdown last week.
I did, I picked him last week as my player. You weren't on the episode, but
he's the first non-Hurts, Barkley, Brown, or Smith to score a touchdown. And then Johnny Wilson did it later in the game. That's crazy that only 4 Eagles up through 8 games have scored a touchdown.
It's not really. It's unsurprising. I mean, if Goddard hadn't missed, 3 weeks, true. There's a good chance he might have had it. But to me, it really isn't a surprise. We knew those 4 guys were going to be the focal point. We knew Goddard was going to kind of disappear into the background a bit and just be, catch a ball when it's thrown to you when we need you.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. I mean, but I mean, how
Which is
many teams?
unfortunate because he's going to probably want to leave and not re-up.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting with Goddard, you know, and I would also be interested to see how many teams have had only 4 players score touchdowns through 10 weeks of a season. That would be interesting to know.
Yeah, that would be a lot of work to do. We'd have to go through a lot of years in football. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into our preview edition of the Kelly Green Hour for the Washington Commanders coming to Philly to face the Philadelphia Eagles. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. Thank you all for the comments in the comment section. We appreciate that. We will be back Monday to get you to give a review of the Thursday night game. We're going to give everybody a chance to breathe. Plus, I don't know if we can handle 3 shows in 1 week. That's a lot of shows. We did Monday too. But thank you all for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.